My name's Jim Estrin. I'm a staff photographer at the New York Times for 22 years, and I am the founder and co-editor of the New York Times photo blog Lens. As a photographer, my influences, well, when I was 16, I wanted to be Eugene Smith, because I started photographing when I was 16, but Joseph Kudelka was a major influence of mine. Eugene Richards was also a significant influence of mine, and Donna Ferrato was an influence of mine as well, for different reasons. So Joseph Kudelka was an influence because when his book Gypsies came out, I understood something about photography and its visual nature that I didn't understand before. He was photographing in ways that, at least at that time, people didn't photograph. Now lots of people do. Donna Ferrato was a profound influence because when her work on spousal abuse came out, when it was first started to get published in magazines in mid-'80s, I realized when I saw the work, which was so profound and so intimate and so strong, that if that was photographable, anything could be photographed. They say that, it said that writing about photography is like dancing about architecture. It isn't, it's not a verbal medium, but I do think that you can write about photographs. I think you can discuss them intelligently. I think you can also write about them in ways that are obtuse and meaningless as well. But I think that there are insights that can be brought, and particularly as far as the photographer's motivations. One of the underlying premises of Lens is that photographs don't happen by themselves. They happen because of photographers. So a lot of what I write about, and a lot of what our writers write about, my colleague and co-editor David Gonzalez, for example, a lot of what we write about is what is about the photographer, as well as the images itself. I think that you can learn to develop the ability to see, your ability to see. I think you can focus on it, but what I think is actually much harder to learn is your ability to be with people. So less the visual element and more the content. And because I teach, and I think teach a lot of things. I can help you think about seeing, concentrate on it more, think about composition, think about storytelling. What's really hard to teach is the ability to be intimate with people and the ability to be with people. And that's much harder to teach. I mean, I can't make you see in a sophisticated manner, but I can help you focus on seeing. I think that as far as Photoshop goes, in documentary photography and in photojournalism, less is more. I mean, we do, at the New York Times, we do minimum photoshopping, but I do a little bit, with the goal of making the scene look like it looked, since a camera's an artificial translation of reality. I think that what's become acceptable in Photoshop in the industry is unfortunate, actually. I think that there's a style of Photoshop that's developed which enhances scenes, makes them more dramatic than they were, and which are gives a false sense of what was happening. I think as a journalist, my job is to, and particularly as a photojournalist, my job is to best report, to best show the truth as best as I can figure it out. That's essentially my job, is to tell the truth as best as I can figure it out. And when you use a great deal of Photoshop, you're trying to make the truth greater, more dramatic. And I don't think the truth needs that. Anytime you point a camera anywhere, you're making a set of personal decisions. So there is a point of view, which is why I say my job is to tell the truth as best as I can figure it out within the parameters of an objective approach, what we consider an objective approach. Obviously, if a camera, the photograph you take, or the photograph that I take, or the photograph that Henry Cartier-Bresson takes, in the same room, in the same place, at the same moment, will be different. But I still think that the camera is useful for reportage, personally. There's always now, today, someone there with a camera, video, or still, taking images and posting it. So the question is, do you need a professional photographer? Do you need a professional journalist there, since someone else is more than likely to be there before you? And I think that it's a very powerful thing, the idea of citizen reporting. So I think it's a very good thing. I think that it means that people, despots, have nowhere to hide, almost. But you can't oppress in secret as much anymore. But the issue is whether you can believe what's posted. How do I know this is true? And it's the issue for news outlets. I think we're all struggling with how do you verify the truth of something? Not just whether it was taken on that day in the right place. There are only a handful of news outlets in the world that I go to that I believe are, with good discipline, trying to be accurate. So the news sources I might rely on, I rely on the New York Times, the Washington Post, BBC, The Guardian, National Public Radio, Associated Press, Reuters. These are English news sources. And because I know that within human frailty, they're trying to be as objective as possible. There are millions of other news sources that I don't rely on because I don't trust that that's what they're doing. Similarly, if someone's posting an image or a video, I don't know the veracity. I don't know whether that's true, because someone else standing there would take a different picture. So either I have to either have reason to believe the media outlet or the individual. And the trouble that we have is verifying those videos that it's truthful. It's a fabulous thing. It's a wonderful thing, citizen reporting, but it does raise a challenge. So it's quite important that it's going on, but you have to view it as knowing that it's one small slice with one point of view. Often with not always, but often with a propaganda aspect. I think iPhone, it's a camera. And I don't think it matters what camera a picture was taken with. There may be more tools that you can use on other cameras. I'm not a big fan of filtration. I think it's somewhat cliche. People use filters and dress up the photos, and But as far as a camera, I think it's they're wonderful cameras. I use them, I love them, and there's an old saying which is, what is the best camera to use, and the best camera is the one you have with you. I much prefer to publish people who are not known for one reason or another. Maybe they're young and starting out. Maybe they're from a country that they may be known in that country but not known worldwide. Maybe they're dead and never got known, in their lifetime. So, I obviously publish photographers who are known, but I'm much more interested in publishing work that's unknown. And I think I have an opportunity, being part of the New York Times, to help bring people into what's the accepted canon of photography. So one thing that I'm really concerned about, and that my colleague David Gonzalez and I have been focusing on for the last year, are issues of representation. So the question is, who's doing the storytelling? What do we know about Africa if we only look at photographs? This is what we know. We know there's war. We know there's famine. There's poverty. And maybe that sometimes people run around without many clothes and there's pretty animals. But what we don't know is that there's a vibrant middle class in many countries, that there's a rich culture, artistic culture, that and none of that gets talked about. We see this minimalized view, and part of the reason for that is who's telling the stories. I think that's really important for local people to be telling their own stories. There's a role for an outsider, an important role actually for an outsider, but there's also a really important role for someone who's from a culture, who knows it in a way that's different and more intimate and less sensationalistic, possibly less dramatic as well. There's a lot of times there's an expected narrative in media companies, among editors. So this is what this story is about. This is what's important. What's important, is the famine. And I think all of those things should be covered. I think war is important. Starvation and hunger is very important. But that's not all there is. And we give an incomplete view of the world, and therefore an incomplete view of other people, and it leads to misunderstandings. So we're really concerned about promoting photographers and local photographers telling their own stories. We think it's critical in media today. I believe in the power of photography. I believe in the power of a single image to bring attention to issues, to encapsulate problems. I think that using multiple photographs, which we're able to do much more because of the web now, there aren't space limitations, allows you to show different aspects of a story, multiple aspects instead of just one. And I think that's useful as well. I wish I had the absolute answer to how will we make a living on the web. I think that there are extraordinary tools for journalists on the web. In a sense, it's almost a golden era for photographers. The ability to have their work seen, the ability to be the full author and storyteller in using multimedia. But at the same time, it's disrupted the economic models that we worked under. And there's a question as to how a photographer would make a living, and whether the current large media companies will be able to transition. There's less money. it makes for an exciting time, more innovation. But I think of this fairly often. I wonder, what will happen in 10 years? And what room is there for me to do the work that's important to me, yet also be able to make a living?